I'm going to play with a tiger puppet. I don't have a toucan puppet. Oh, we are live. Hello, everybody. How is everyone? Can I be heard? Am I loud enough? Where did my snowman go? You mean you can't be heard? Why can't we hear Mikey?
My voice.
We're professionals.
My voice is now here with you. I think. Hopefully, I can see me bouncing now.
Yes, you are. You are live.
Awesome. Yeah, I could see me talking. I was monitoring my own audio.
Mikey, how are you?
I think. Hopefully, I am very good. I'm very excited. I've had lots of sleep. Usually, it's too little sleep, but today was a.
Today, I have had too little sleep. In fact, it sounds like you took your sleep and my sleep. Oh, you have a coffee.
I do.
I want a coffee.
Coffee.
So jealous. Hi, Roderick. Roderick is third. It's true.
Yay! How you doing?
Yay!
Yeah.
Good.
So we have quite a bit to go through tonight, as we do always.
We have.
Oh, that was so close. So, you know, on a notepad, you can get these things that keep it shut and stuff.
Yeah,
They also, yes, suspenders. My suspenders got caught around my iPad.
I'm never going to this club again.
And I almost just dragged it to the floor. I am glad that did not happen.
For those of you who don't understand why I said that, suspenders in the UK would be garter belt.
Yes.
We call them braces.
Now then. Cool.
So yes, Mikey, what have we got to talk about today? Do you want to start with patches? Do you want to start with news? Do you want to start with ideas?
I think we should show off the new level as a great introduction, because Yann's been. Are there anything I need to pull, or is the build from earlier?
You're up to date.
Has that been pushed to itch.io yet?
Not yet. I'll do that after the stream.
Yeah, we'll do that after the stream.
So I've been working on trying to reduce the lag in the level, because there's moments where you see so much geometry, it's slowing down the game on some systems. 2, making MSAA or anti-aliasing, the little get rid of the jagged lines or jagged bits on lines, an option, because some graphics cards can do it fine and some can't. So for those of you who can, switch it on, and for those of you who can't, don't. And I've been working on making the level look a lot more populated and a lot more alive, a lot more like a city. Had a lot of fun with just making little neon signs for and pulling neon row. They just go through really fast, just for the moment where you go into a dark little claustrophobic bit, and then suddenly zip, 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 and then open space. Yes.
So one of the things that I'm going to show is your latest commit note, as I think that is incredibly amusing. So we're going to bring this across, and hopefully
you were like, "Oh, that's right. I fixed the handling on the craft because there was." Can you read that? Because I can't read that.
I can't read that at all. Let's go to... It's also slightly cut off, I think. So I need to just go to single screen to show that off. So yeah, tweaked the repulsion to fix the Mikey crying every time the craft bounces slightly bug.
Yep. I fixed it.
Yes.
King I commit.
It was amazing. That's a great commit. So
yeah. Look on his face when he read it, was like...
That's just rude, that is. Very rude. Anyway, enough of lovely commit nonsense. Let's go in and play the game. Now, I'm just going to launch straight into it this evening because it's going to have my settings from earlier. Let me play. So we're going to be racing Team Paladin using the Vapor. And we're going to be in New Andromeda City, where Yann's added a lot of buildings, and the feel of the game is significantly different. Graphics options, Yann has been working on the graphics options, so we now have an extra anti-aliasing. Now this, if I'm right, on AMD cards doesn't work.
Well, it works. It'll slow the frame rate right down, and that was part of the problem we were having, which is Godot 3 uses an obsolete rendering system. That's why they're switching. And AMD doesn't fully support GLES 3. It mostly supports it. So if you have anti-aliasing on, it just slows everything down.
Right. Now, if I'm just going to bring up, the screen will go black just as I'm tweaking audio settings and stuff, just because of full screen capture. I think it's something to be aware of. So that's what the flickering is.
Now,
there.
something you're not going to see in the view, but you will see when I push it, you pull the demo. The way the craft reacts to track is now a little smoother. You bob a lot less.
Yes, this is the Mikey hits the floor and moans a lot bug.
Which is fair.
So yeah, lots of fun stuff in this city. See if you guys can spot the new stuff from last week.
2,
Remember.
1, go.
So hopefully the game audio's not too loud, and I can be heard over the top of it. Look at that slide. Oh, no.
Look at that jump! Oh, sweet hubris. You never get old.
Yeah, oh, look at that. So what am I in? I'm in last, which is a great start. So yeah, because it's not so open anymore.
You have to know the track.
Yeah. Oh, I hit someone. Oh, nice.
Oh, I couldn't see the Has-Beens coffee sign. I'm pretty proud of that coffee. So those little signs were a lot of fun to make. You'll see them for like a split second unless you crash, but they're great. There's even a little jelly bean.
I would absolutely love damage modelling in this game with all the collisions, but might be just a bit too much of a stretch.
Yeah, I think we'd have to redo all of the physics from scratch.
Oh, you imagine bits breaking off as you collided. It'd be a bit nuts. Oh, I'm not in first yet. I am shocked.
I'm not. That was quite a hit you took at the beginning.
That was. Although, there we go. Haha, nothing can stop me now. Oh, and I really like the HDR, the actual environment we're flying through.
We found someone released on open source a Crab Nebula render, which just works so much better than the new Starfield we originally pulled from NASA. Wow, I could speak. You know, I used to teach public speaking to undergrads.
Did you?
You can tell, can't you?
Tell me more. Uh-oh.
Remember, when that hits, brake.
I let go of the accelerator. I'm getting there.
So things that we've added. The building's coming up now, just to break off that area, make this feel a lot more closed. This little bit here, Neon Alley, all these little signs coming in, like the XXY, Mikey's Instruments, McDonald's, Pizza, Oodles of Noodles, Has-Beens, Uncle Charlie's, that big train. Then we go around here, there's a nice little crowded bit, and then we open up, right? So I want it to feel nice and claustrophobic on the right here, and then massive skyscape. That's what we're looking for.
This is essentially a drifting game now, around this part. I love it.
And one of the hard things you have to learn when you're doing this course, as opposed to the last one, is just because you're boosting doesn't mean you have to hold your finger on the accelerator. Which
is how I drive in real life. I hold my finger on the accelerator.
It just leans down on the car. There's Neon Alley below us. I've also coloured in some of the buildings in Ares campus just for reasons.
I love the fact that you can drift in this game.
Yeah, it's
I'm about to lap someone. There he is. Bye-bye. Whoa.
Yep. You're about to explode, actually.
Oh, yeah, I better get a shield recharge.
Now, on my screen, the frame rate's quite low, but I think that might be the internet.
I think that probably... No, I'm gonna... So, I will bring us back by doing this. Yeah, okay.
So another big thing we did was I noticed when I was playing the game, I'd get to about lap 3 and the game would just slow right down. I mean, like 3 frames a second. And I couldn't figure out why. And then eventually I realized the motion trails. When you die, you get moved back to the checkpoint. And this is quite long level. So we have 14 checkpoints, but it could still be quite a distance. And it was drawing a motion trail across half the level. And just suddenly having to calculate all that geometry that fast for 4 or 5 craft at the same time was causing my computer just to give up.
Yeah, we would often have the AI all, because it's not super intelligent AI at the moment, they'd all ram into the wall in the same place pretty much every time, so they'd all die roughly around the same time as well, which is...
And of course their explosions would trigger each other's explosions.
I
don't have coffee. I have a chocolate bar.
I'm impressed with that chocolate bar.
This is my chocolate bar.
You could do a bit of...
My head.
I always get acronyms the
Look
wrong
at
way
the
around.
price. I mean, no, I'm not going to advertise. A quid. I'll take it.
So you can get a lot of chocolate for a quid these days.
Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of work done behind the scenes on trying to, this level particularly, trying to get rid of those moments that choke computers. It's not going to be perfect yet. There's still some more to do. I almost had to redesign the entire level to use a different way of rendering buildings, which I didn't want to have to do because it was a pain, and luckily I didn't. But we'll see how it works. I'll push it, see how it goes. Yes. And the rest of it was just making the world feel lived in and hiding bits of level we don't want to see at any given point. We don't want big open space unless that moment calls for big open space.
Yes. I mean, I absolutely love the level now it's closed in. It has changed so much. So beforehand, with the prototype, it was pretty much a couple of buildings and the track going around it. And it was so easy to fly because it not only felt so slow, even though the speed's the same, but also there was you could see the track ahead for a long time, so you could pretty much drive it without any difficulty. And now there are buildings blocking and obscuring the track. Not only does it feel faster, but the track comes up on you so much quicker than it did before.
Yeah, and Roderick makes a good point. It didn't come up on my list either until I noticed that when people were dying, this huge line was being drawn across the level, and as it did, everything jerked.
Yeah.
There might be other things as well causing slowdown, but that really made a big difference. I've also made a change to how the repulsion works. How to explain this? Okay. Here is your MagRacer.
If you turn it sideways,
here is your MagRacer. The MagRacer has 4 little lines underneath.
Yeah.
Every time one of these lines detects a track, it pushes the craft up by a certain amount. So if all 4 are there, it's fine. But the track is kind of curved, so you'll bob and bounce a lot. This one here is facing forward, right? So it can detect curves coming up in the track. So here we go. We're coming up to a curve, and we're fine. But if you're going too fast, you don't rise high enough. So I was trying to figure out how to do this without massively changing how everything works. And what I did was I disabled 2 of those lines and double the strength in the other 2, which means you bob up and down a lot less, because at any given point, you're more likely to be exerting that force. But it also means when that slip is coming, you are already being pushed up that much.
Yeah, which prevents the... we were playing the game earlier, testing it out, and one of my, as a playability point, if it was a game, is the fact that if I'm going along those big straights and I'm really going fast, the whole point is the speed.
Yeah.
And to just nudge the floor, and it was amazing the spin out I did, but I just went absolutely flying. And I was like, that's kind of cool, but it breaks the immersion. And if you've got something that breaks the immersion in the game, you've got to find a way of making that not happen. And the
speed you're going at, it was happening when you really couldn't have seen it coming. Like you're being punished for something out of your control.
Yeah.
And that's not a great gameplay mode. So,
I'm absolutely fine if I'm skirting the corner and I'm riding up on the corner, that occasionally I'm going to hit that and spin out, but I'm trying to take the shortest path. So I'm like in a normal car racing game, if you go over the sides in a sort of simulation game, perhaps you can damage the car or slow down if you go too far.
Well, there was that moment when I pushed that change. I said, can you try that, see if it feels better? And the first thing that happened was you started like slamming into the walls. And I was a bit worried. It turned out, no, it felt good enough that Mikey was now trying to slide sideways around the corner with his nose right against the wall just to see if he could do it. And he almost did it, but then he didn't, so he spun out. And that's like, okay, you took a risk, that didn't work.
Yes, that was definitely a risk-reward situation rather than I've just been spun out because of reasons.
Yep. So yeah, it's also interesting how much changing where the detection points and how strong they are for the magnetic track change the handling of the craft. It feels a lot. It feels a lot less suspension, bouncy. Feels less bouncy.
Yeah, it feels more solid, which a racer really should. We're not doing a bouncy game. It's not a boat, essentially. We're not on water trying to ride crests
We're not
and troughs.
Bouncy Castle, the racing game. Although that sounds amazing.
Bouncy Castle, the racing game. Maybe.
You ever tried to run on a bouncy castle?
No,
Are they called bouncy castles in the States?
Okay, I would say yes. I have tried to run on a bouncy castle. It didn't work out in my favour.
It's really exhausting.
It's like running on a trampoline. It's a lot of fun. So the other thing that we want to talk about is an elephant in the room. So we're obviously.
I have so many elephant jokes. Mikey, would you like an elephant joke? Would you like an elephant joke?
No. I've got elephant jokes. No.
Are you racing in the castle or driving the castle? Okay, one player is driving the castle and the other person is racing back and forth, moving water to cool the engine and fuel and plugging leaks.
This sounds like a very interesting Barotrauma remix.
Yeah.
Perhaps we'll save some elephant jokes for later on.
How do you keep an elephant cool? Air conditioning. Thank you.
That's both not funny but educational.
Okay, elephant in the room.
Elephant in the room. So we are about 3/4 of the way through our Kickstarter, but only about 30% funded. Yeah. So we're hyper aware. We knew going into this with the pandemic and just the general world situation at the moment that there was always a possibility that we wouldn't get to the end goal. So we wanted to look at that with you guys and talk about it. Some of the things that we've got coming up, I've even made notes, which means it must be important. So yeah.
Before we go any further, we want to make it very clear we are still very much believing in this project. Like we think
definitely.
This has a lot of. This has potential. We might get a sudden, burst of funding and all the rest of it. We might not, but we're going to keep going as if we're funding to the wire, right? That's the idea. Keep working this project.
Earlier today, I realised that obviously we had updated the Kickstarter last week with the extra courses that we want to do, covering the actual modelling of it, the texturing, both in Mixer and Substance, and a general texturing overview course to just get rid of all of the misconceptions about texturing out there anyway. And we realised, or certainly I realised, we need to update the title as well. So we've updated the title of the course to better reflect, or the Kickstarter to better reflect what we want to actually do.
Yeah. So we've got those going on. Let's talk about what happens. I mean, we know what happens if we fund, right? We've covered that.
Yeah.
What happens if we don't fund? First off, what happens to MagRacer? So our current thinking, Mikey, do you want to take this or shall I?
I'll pass the ball to you because it is your baby, as it were.
Yeah. So the current idea is we would spend a few hours a week working on it as a game rather than a course. Okay? And running a Patreon or some of the crowdfunding stuff to see if people want to back it, because there are some people very, very keen on this project, so that we can do things like, well, one, justify spending more than a few hours a week. Two, buying better sound assets, right? Because if we're not producing this as a course, we don't have to worry about getting hold of or making sound assets that we have the rights to distribute. If it's for a game, we can buy them.
Yeah. That's a big thing, by the way. That's a huge thing. I mean, I find when I'm teaching things like textures, for instance, it's much better to give you guys textures within the course itself than it is to say, go sign up for this service like textures.com, but you can only get 15 textures, so you might not be able to implement everything you want. So being able to buy in
why a lot of
assets
educational content has Kenny assets. Kenny does great stuff. I mean, sometimes getting them to work in Godot could be a pain because he's not designing for Godot, which is fair. Yeah. But he releases Creative Commons Zero, which means you don't need to pay, you don't need to attribute, you can just use them, which means everyone can just distribute them with their course.
Yeah, definitely. One thing, of course, is, and this is a genuine question, is, why if you're going to do stuff like that, why don't you just go ahead and make this stuff anyway? Now, the basic reason behind that is focusing on such a large course like this without people wanting it enough to fund a Kickstarter to begin with, basically demonstrates spending like the next 3 to 6 months on it. It's difficult. Yes. It's difficult.
There's also the fact that it's going to be so making a course this size, by the time we're able to release anything, we would have to spend 6 to 9 weeks prototyping, fixing, recording, editing before we have enough to actually release even the early access, which means 2, maybe 3 months of no income, right? Or not producing stuff that we're getting paid for.
Yeah.
Which is fine some of the time. But realistically, it's not a great idea, right? So if we're going to release big 20, 30-hour courses with like lots and lots of intricate coding and all the rest of it, we kind of need a buffer going into it, especially as a young company that has to.
Yeah, of course.
Which is why, when we looked at the money and how much would we need minimum, it's like, well, we need Bastion to do this. He's got a job, so we need to pay him for his time.
Yeah.
We need to take time doing that. We need to, pay for services and accountants and all the other things. This is what it would cost.
Yeah.
If we don't have that going in, that's fine. We can just turn this into a different kind of project, like more of a passion project.
Yes, and that's why making it into an actual game, following it forward, is one of the ways in which we could do that.
Now, on the back of that, we have noticed that quite a few people, actually more than we thought, like the lifetime backer thing.
Yes.
Mikey, would you like to talk about lifetime backer things?
Yeah, go on then. So, obviously, lifetime backer, what does that mean? That means you get access to everything we've done so far and everything in the future that we will do. It's a great way of supporting us early on and also getting a bonus in the fact that you get everything we ever do in the future at a set price, which is a phenomenal deal. So one of the things, of course, is, if you're not doing MagRacer, what else have you got, or what's in the future pipeline? So I certainly know some of my next steps. If we don't reach that goal by...
Well, before we go into that, do we want to talk about the plan about what to do with lifetime?
Oh, yes. So at the moment, we've got it as is it £180 on the Kickstarter? So we would open that up as an option on our site at the same price. So the 6 or so people that are back already can actually take up on the fact that they want to support us.
As can other people, if and when money becomes available and they want to.
Yes, indeed. Now, what we will do in the future with that is, as we add more courses to our portfolio, the price of that on our site will go up each time. Eventually, we might expire it, of course. There's no guarantee we'd keep it.
And we want to say, gradually. We're not saying we're doubling the price every time.
No.
Yeah, it's released a 2-hour course. It's now £360.
No, not like that. But it then means that in future Kickstarters, we can offer it still at a price. It will never be as low as it's been today, which is fair, I think. It
means future Kickstarters we could do, for instance, a discounted lifetime thing.
Yeah, and it'd be great to know your opinions on that as well.
Yeah. So there's that. But if we're talking about that, we should talk about plans coming up in the future.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
Mikey's got some very strong ones. I've got some things lined up that I want to do. However, we should talk a little bit. I want to talk about the furlough. If
you want to.
Because it actually impacts. Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, there's a thing in the UK where if for some reason the current situation means that you can't work or your company can't afford to pay you, right? Then the government will pay a certain amount, I think it's 80%, for you to keep going and not work during that time. Like you can do, research and stuff like that, but you can't actually do the job. If we go for that, which is a possibility because the pandemic is hitting everybody, it means that I can't commit to, I will release this course next month.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? So I have to be very careful with the things that I want to talk about. I can't give you dates because it is a possibility of doing so. I mean, obviously, if I sit down with Godot and just do some basic, how does Godot work for my own benefit? Great. I could do that.
Yeah.
So there's that. That being said, Mikey has some things he's working on.
Yeah, so I've been pondering what to do, especially with all of the stuff that I've learnt recently. One of the things, I'll plug it here because I can do shameless plugs, is towards the end of this month, a course I've been working on with Penny DeBale will be released. It's in Unity rather than Godot, but it's about modular assets using procedural generation to create levels, not just like little mazes and things, but full-on dungeons. So that's really exciting. I've really enjoyed working on that project. But I've learnt a lot from actually implementing those assets and working on MagRacer that I really want to hit the ground running with a comprehensive Blender course. Now, I've also been thinking about how to release this. And I think that on our site, each section as it comes out, I'll just release it there. And there will be a complete bundle of all of that. And we're thinking about the Blender Creative Series or something along those lines. I like how that sounds. So the Blender Creative Series will cover a lot of different things that Blender can do. And I've had some preliminary talks. I'm not going to mention names, but I've had some preliminary talks with a couple of other instructors who are really good at things like hard surface modeling. One of them's amazing at procedural materials and textures. It's amazing what they can do, and they are up for contributing to this as well. So this course will be absolutely amazing. I really hope so. I
think it will be.
Yeah. So I would release it on our platform, a section at a time. There'll also be the Complete Blender series, which is more like an early access. I will call it that. I know it's got a negative connotation in some respects, but it'll be an early access, and the price of that will go up as more and more content's added to it. But if you buy into that early, you get the whole series of courses basically at the price whatever you buy the series at the time.
I should point out, by the way, the reason I'm not smiling is I'm sleepy. I'm very excited about this. Because I just saw my face. It's like, oh, he's frightening. To clarify exactly what that looks like, on Teachable, we're able to bundle lots and lots of courses together, right? So what that means is once Mikey starts producing these things, you could just buy the sections you want as an individual course. So if you just want to know about texturing in Blender, you could just get that, right? But if you want the whole thing, you could just buy the bundle at a discounted price, and that price would go up as more content is available.
Yeah,
so
we're still fleshing out the details on that. One of the grand ideas I've got. I'll roll the texturing one. I'll take that. So say the Blender Creative Series will be a series of introductory courses to covering quite in depth how to do modeling, how to do the texturing, how to do the rigging, how to do the animating, etc. So it's going to be a very holistic course. It'll cover everything Blender can do. I know that sounds really high level, but I do want to show people the capabilities of things like motion graphics. Blender can be used for motion graphics. I've tried it myself, and I was like, oh, I don't have to use now something like I forget what the Premiere, what's the other one? After Effects. So you can do things in Blender very similar to the motion graphics that you do in After Effects. So I want to cover a big breadth of what Blender can do. But the Creative Series will all be the beginnings of potentially other courses. So take the texturing module. You'll learn in the Blender Creative Series how to actually texture a model, how to UV unwrap, etc. And that will be the first section of an in-depth texturing series, which may cover other things. Now, I can't commit to what that would be at the moment, but that would be perhaps more along the lines of in-depth procedural shaders. It might be how to texture using trim sheets or something else. There are lots and lots of ways that we can take it, and that's probably something for later next year rather than.
And I think that's very exciting because you've tried to explain trim sheets to me like 6 times. And I've pretended to understand each time, and I don't. Well,
it was thanks to Melicon. I don't know if he's here today. If he is, hello. But it was thanks to Melicon. He showed me this textured model using trim sheets, and I was like, well, I've used trim sheets before in like environments, and it is often used in environmental textures. And then I just dug a little deeper on ArtStation. I realized, oh my word, if you do trim sheets mixed with vertex painting, you've got an amazing array of detail on your models without having to uniquely unwrap every time. And it stemmed from us, Yann and I, talking about the length of time it takes to retexture the models, because all of our ships are classed as hero assets. They've all got unique UV unwraps. Oh, sorry, not unique UV unwraps, but unique texturing on those unwraps. Whereas if you use, and I won't go too technical here, but if you were to use trim sheets, you could just change out the trim sheet and it just update the models immediately. And it doesn't really matter where you've put the decals, it can work incredibly well. And then another thing that we realise is when we've got like the logo of a company, using a trim sheet, we can make that really high definition. Using unique UV unwrapping, we end up with some problems where the UV unwrap's not big enough on the texture. You end up with blurry text or a blurry logo, and that can be quite challenging to fix.
And there is this weird balancing act when you're dealing with textures, because you want to use the lowest possible resolution, the lowest possible fidelity of image you can that matches the style of your game. For example, the first time we put buildings in the game, Mikey created these buildings and he just, used a plugin he had to just generate a concrete texture.
Yep.
Didn't look at the things, pressed export, gave it to me, and we realized I couldn't upload this on Git.
The concrete texture itself being a high def 8K texture.
8K texture.
And we weren't, to be honest, we weren't actually focused on optimizing the game at this point. We were focused on, does this look right in game, rather than does it play well. In retrospect, perhaps we should have been a little bit more cautious. Did throw caution to the wind, but we were just testing, so it didn't really matter.
Well, we weren't really at the stage where this is going to be exported to people.
Exactly.
And we ran into this really interesting problem. I'm making things in Substance Painter. Substance Painter doesn't smush all the things together on one image.
Yeah.
So all the albedos don't get smushed together, all the normals don't get smushed together. So I just had a bunch of separates. It's fine. I'm just doing it for myself.
Yeah.
Go to export the file. The file exports at 2.8 gig.
Which is a lot, by the way.
Which is a lot. And it's a problem because Godot 3 won't run exports larger than 2 gig without some very serious hacking. The kind of hacking that is really beyond the scope of a course.
Yeah.
You should know the engine at that point. Godot 4 apparently solves this problem. So I spent a week redoing all of the textures, every single texture on every single ship for every single team. And it took me 4 or 5 days to get it right. And when I looked at it, the final export was 780 meg.
So
that's a 2 gig drop just from ship textures.
And that the fidelity hadn't really changed. So we're not talking about anything else other than how the textures are combined together. So instead of having, I think was it 5 materials on each craft?
Yes, because we don't change the engine one out. Yeah.
We basically went down to just having, now they've got 1 material with 1 texture.
And it's this thing, because we didn't design the game from first principles. What we did was we did a thing, played with it, did a thing, played with it. It's a tech demo that grew into an alpha, right? What that means is we never sat down and looked at optimization. The moment Mikey ran this, he suddenly realized the game loaded in a third the time.
Yeah, it was
the frame rate on his machine went from 60 to 120. Just because there's so much less in memory. Like the machine can just let it go. Those are the kinds of things that you really need to know about when you're texturing, when you're making games, right? Yeah. The person coding the game might not realize that the impact it's going to make, but you as a texture artist should know this.
Yeah. So you mentioned Godot 4 there. It's going to be one of the questions we get asked all the time. What about Godot 4? It is alpha.
Going to make a Godot 4 complete course of a kind of depth and scope comparable to what Mikey's talking about with Blender. I'm going to say comparable to, because I don't know how much depth I can go into compared to it. I can't start that yet because Godot 4 is still in heavy development. It's growing day by day. We're still at the nightly alphas. So anything I work on at the moment might not make it in, might completely change. The documentation isn't written yet. Like, I could download and compile it for my own curiosity. But at this stage, there's nothing there that you could really teach. There's stuff that you could show off.
And if we can, we can show off some stuff. That would be really awesome. I mean, I had this specifically when Blender 2.8 first came out. I created an environments course. Now, within 6 months of releasing that, which is roughly the length of time it took to make the course, Blender had changed some of its UI quite significantly. And so I started playing with it in alpha, and it was great. We could do some YouTube videos about new things that are coming up. But whenever you're using alpha stuff, you have to badge it with the caveat, this might be different tomorrow. And there were things with Blender that were completely changed in the following release. And I remember in my downloads folder, I had Blender and the hash for each of the daily downloads. And it was great because if something wasn't working, I could just roll back a day. But it was also infuriating because you could also break your project by doing so. So we do have to...
we had the same thing when I did Game Dev TV, when I did the Discovering Godot 3.1 stuff because 3.1 beta came out. I started working the beta, and then it came out to the live release, and they just moved some of the UI elements around.
That's all it
Which
takes,
means
isn't it?
that
Yeah.
new people didn't know what I was doing because they didn't understand the UI well enough, so I had to go back and redo them all. Hype level raise. Like God of 4 is looking good. The new lighting system, the new particle system, the Vulkan system, FBX import is now going to be native in the next version of Godot, like Godot 3.24. There's a lot going on there. Just the visual quality of Godot is going through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, to segue just into more things about the future. I mean, you've played a lot in Substance Painter, so there is also the potential to us to branch into some of the other packages that we use on a day-to-day basis, depending on, of course, interest. That's one of the big things. But also, if we could do an introduction for you with Substance Painter that gets your legs going, then people are asking for more content on it. That's the sort of thing that we would love to do.
And that's one of the things that's in my pipeline is the possibility of a Substance Painter course. Now, this is a bit of a departure for us because Substance Painter is not free and open source software. And I know some people are saying Arda isn't free, you have to pay £1 or $1 for it. It's still free and open source. It's not free as in beer, it's free as in liberty. And you can compile it for free. Substance Painter is not that. Substance Painter is a commercial product.
Yes.
Right? So it might be that we don't have the audience for that, which, fine, we can look at that when it comes.
I'll throw in just a quick one there, that Substance Painter is something you can get for free currently as a student license if we release such a course on a platform like Udemy. I don't think we would qualify for that status ourselves as Canopy Games, but I know on Udemy that is a case. So if you're taking courses on Udemy, you can often apply for a student license for Substance Painter. So free tip for people out there.
Yep. That said, if it is something people enjoy, there's other bits of software we'd really like to look at, like Houdini.
I'd love to not only look at Houdini, but I've started playing with it in the background, and again, it's a bit of time there as well. But Houdini's absolutely fantastic. It's a complete departure from what you do in things like Blender. Unless everything nodes comes along later on in Blender 2.9, everything nodes might start doing a similar thing. But Houdini is all about proceduralism. You start with a basic cube or whatever primitive you start with, and then it's just a series of node trees essentially. And I still can't get over some of the things you can do with it that you don't have to manually code. You know, talking about procedural mazes earlier, that's things you have to code. Houdini you just plug things in and it does that.
And that brings us back to the idea of working on MagRacer as a passion project for a small indie game, is that allows us, especially the Patreon, to save up money for things like a Houdini license. Because, of course, you can get a Houdini student license. Sorry? Oh, right. Hi! You can get Houdini as a student license, but you can't release indie games on that student license. So that would allow us to work on that and make some really cool assets. Because the kind of stuff you can do with Houdini is amazing.
I'd like to interject there, because the thing with who? What? He's not here. Shh. So one of the things you can do with like the student license and the free license, if you are honestly going to take that and run with it for a game and use the power of Houdini to generate your assets, your levels and things like that, you are really venturing into the commercial space. And at that point, I know it's a tough one to swallow for some people, but you do need to pony up for software, for licensing. We were talking earlier about when we're making a course, buying licenses to redistribute stuff is a lot different from just buying a license to use in a game that we're creating. So you know, perhaps that's something we can look into. I mean, I'm hungry now. That's something we could potentially look into, like a guide for you guys on what to look out for. We're not solicitors or lawyers with IP and things like that, but it is worth bearing in mind the trouble you can get in, or the potential of just killing a project outright if you just misuse a license. I found some wonderful assets, some futuristic buildings that would be perfect for what we want to do with MagRacer.
Yeah.
The moment we looked at it, because the license was like $50, I was like, this is phenomenal. Personal use only. It didn't say that unless you read the license. And when you read the license and you're like, okay, how much to use it commercially? What, 8,000? Okay, we can't do that. So it can make a big difference.
Stuff on Epic Stock Media, which is where I like to go browsing for sound effects.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of sound effects that would be perfect for MagRacer. There's like an energy weapons one and another one that just can't go in a course. Because you are licensed to use this, you cannot redistribute it.
Yeah.
So I can't give these sound effects to you. But if this is an indie game, then that's a £50 payment for really cool sounding engines and weapons and shields and UI and everything else like that. Suddenly,
that's a good investment. That's a very good investment. Yeah. So the other thing we can do, of course, and we've done it with a couple of people. We were speaking to a company down in London about music production.
Oh, I need to get back to them.
Yes. So we're talking to the chaps down there. They've approached us about writing music and stuff for MagRacer. I mean, that's a brilliant symbiotic relationship there, and they can be part of that project. And that's great having someone like that on the side. But again, licensing is really important, and we've got to be very careful. And we can talk to people about, can we use a subset of this in a course we're doing and basically act as a sales platform for that. I can't, that can be a bit uncomfortable because you end up in situations where you're recommending something because you get to use it rather than because it's necessarily good. Although we generally not pick anything unless it was good. But for instance, it might have one sound in it that's amazing and 500 that are not. That sort of pack.
That's raised an interesting point about a good community call for handcrafted sound effects.
We've talked about this a lot, haven't we? Actually, community sourcing and actually driving forward like a community asset store, where because we've got hundreds of students that are capable of making brilliant things, but they're not being used anywhere. So it's a real shame to have that produced and then just sit on a shelf.
If we did the sound effects one, I'd want to make sure we had a sound effects course in our portfolio that people could take so they felt comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
Because sound design is well beyond my ken. It's beyond my Barbie too. I mean, my whole dream house is just too far from it. I get the basics. I haven't done it. I don't have the tools for it. I don't have
Yeah.
There's a lot of great tools out there that are free. I don't know which ones are junk.
Yeah.
I saw Odin 2 was released with this incredible new door and all the rest of it, and I can't figure out how to install it. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think we're very well placed for things like visual assets and scripts.
Yes, I mean, I've been beavering away with stuff in the background. We're trying to work out at the moment how to position that on our site, how to actually display it. We have some rudimentary skills when it comes to web development, but at the same time, we're dealing with a platform, Teachable, and we're not quite sure how to integrate in certain places. And I want to make sure that if we've made assets for you guys to download, that they're in a place that's easy to see, easy to download. Our option at the moment is quite simple. We create a course called Assets, which you go into, and then you go to a lecture, and then you go to the downloads of the lecture. For me, that feels like far too many steps to get at something, and easy to lose someone along the trail. Even with like a video showing where to go. We'll probably start that way, but as time moves on, I'd like it to be a tanks asset pack. You click on it, it gives you the sounds, the resources, and everything else within that one pack.
I'm devil's avocado. I think it's a good amount of steps, but this is a conversation that he and I have had a lot.
Yeah.
About what's the best way to get assets out there. We do still want to have some sort of repository out there that needs a better name, but yeah. Yes,
asset repo. Obviously, when it's hyphenated isn't so great.
Just replying to Daz there.
One word. Horribly. Yeah, that's fine. And going back to the Godot Getaway, the buildings idea. We had a similar idea last year with Godot Getaway, where we've got all of these buildings and assets. And to make a realistic city, you probably about 5 buildings you can get away with it. You can rotate them and things like that. But I've seen some amazing stuff. I can't pull it up right at the moment, but it was shared on our Discord.
People's stuff on our Discord is just stunning. And that's what you want to see. right? I mean, when we make this content, the idea is not we're going to make something better than you guys can. It's here's a technique, show me what you can do.
Yeah, here's the torch, run with it. One of the
something we have discussed,
yeah,
and I don't think this is the way forward, is what if we make MagRacer a sort of community-based project? And the problem we have there is the admin involved is a full-time job.
Yeah.
Right? Because someone's going to make sure that all the code speaks to all of the other code. Someone's going to run the repository. Someone's going to run the assets. Somebody's going to run the wish list and the bugs list and all the rest of it. At that point, you've actually magnified the amount of work that needs to go into the project.
Yeah, Yann asked me earlier, what do you think to this? I thought, it's a blooming brilliant idea. And then the next question was, who's going to admin it? Yeah, who runs it? Because it's a community thing. I mean, if one of you guys wants to hold that torch and start it up, that'd be phenomenal.
But that, again, brings up all kinds of licensing issues. Like, we have to be very careful how we do that. Like, we want you guys to take charge of that. We want to support it. But we also don't want to put you guys in a situation where someone says, you've just distributed my assets and I'm withdrawing the permission to do that.
Yeah. Not to get all technical and legal on people, but it would have to be something like, if you're part of the project, you give everybody as part of the project unrevocable rights in order to use it.
Or you release it on like a CC0 or CC BY or
yeah. A reasonable license that means it can still be community driven. Right. I mean, I kind of like this. This is a personal preference. I like CC0 obviously because it's easy to just download and use. You don't have to worry about anything. But I personally feel that CCBY, but with no other restrictions, is a better situation because someone has spent time making that asset. And typically, even if it is CC0, I've done this with a couple of videos in the past, I've used their work, CC0, I've still gone and credited them because in my mind, they're an artist, they're a coder, whoever it is, they've taken the time to do that, and that's just a little thank you, and go check them out because they may have other stuff that is also CC0 that you might want to use. So
now that does bring us to one other thing we were talking about for the pipeline. And we haven't discussed this in a few weeks. I'm putting Mikey in the spot here. Mikey, can you guess what I'm saying now?
No, I slept since then. Asset packs.
We were talking about the potential of us making asset packs for people to use in their games.
Oh, that's what I was leading on to with the thing before. So yeah, carry on. Yeah, I'm on board with that.
So the idea is we would spend some time. And so as you know from this Kickstarter, the idea was we'd make these assets available to everyone.
Yes.
On a CC BY license. So doesn't matter if you don't take our course, you can come to our website, download, the buildings and the spaceships and the billboards, whatever else we make, and they're yours. You can use them in your game. No worries. Just say, buy Canopy games and you're fine. There was a time where we were sitting there thinking, how much time would we need to take to create large asset packs? And this is partly inspired by how useful Kenny's stuff is and Quaternius' stuff is.
Yes.
And stuff on Open Game Market. Not Open Game Market.
Open Game Art?
Open Game Art.
Yeah,
Open Game Market is commercial. The other one. And it's just a really good way of giving back to the community as a whole.
Yeah.
We are both in a situation where we would love to be able to just release free content.
I mean, that's
the problem is we can't because he has a mortgage and I have rent. Right? Like that. It's
I like food. Boy, do I like food.
Not like I'm making down payments on my third helicopter here. We have to find that balance, but we do want to get some more free stuff out. We even if we do a couple of large commercial packs to supplement them, it's something we're talking about. So is that something you guys are interested in?
And would it be something you're interested in if there was a Patreon? So those that did want to contribute to it. Yann and I have talked a lot about Patreon recently and how it can be used to help it started off with MagRacer. We were like, well, we like this. We'd like to make it into a game. How do we do that? Patreon is one of probably many options. But the same with assets, and as part of that, you're supporting, and there are loads of things that we could do with Patreon. Like if you support on Patreon, you get discounts off of courses and other things like that. So it's like a thank you for saying thank you.
Now,
how polite.
One of the reasons why Patreon becomes useful at that point is, like, I'm going to be doing a little bit of work on MagRacer in the background, just because I think it's a great project. I really love doing it. But if Mikey is starting work on this big Blender project, and I say, hey, Mikey, you said you're going to redo all of the ships for me. Can I have those? And it's like, but I have to get these courses out. But If we say, but we have this much money budgeted from Patreon that we can use to justify doing that,
Yeah,
it's like, okay, I'll take that
works,
section of the week, a couple of hours to make some ships, and I'll get you the rest next week.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing. And not only that, that's something, but that perhaps if there was a higher we'll dwell on Patreon for a bit, I think. If there was a higher tier of backer, perhaps that could be you get a bespoke asset made for you, or a bespoke asset made that everybody can use.
Mikey sing through Zoom.
I could. I am taking singing lessons.
Are you?
Yeah. That was very high pitched, Yann. You were noise cancelled. It is like, oh, Discord doesn't support pixies.
Discord does not like that.
Cut. Yeah, so there are plenty of options anyway moving forward, but as we mentioned earlier, we're still really passionate about MagRacer. We fully understand that it's 30% funded, with 25% of the time to go. So it is an uphill struggle from here. If we fund, we know exactly what we're doing. If we don't fund, we know pretty much what we're doing. So we're happy, we're energized, excited. Over the next week or so, we're going to be pushing MagRacer as hard as we can and out there to everybody. And if you know people who are interested in either learning about Godot or indeed any of the other packages that we've now expanded the Kickstarter to, because we're not just talking about coding in Godot, making a MagRacer or a high-speed racing game. We're now talking about a Blender course specifically on sci-fi ships and buildings. And Yann's wants to say something. Substitute mixer.
One of the interesting things about MagRacer is both Mikey and I have learned so much from this project that has helped us in completely different areas. For example, I was looking at, okay, so other things that I can work on in the future, because I always have like 2 or 3 pet projects going on at a given time, and one of them was a top-down racer. So I got a bunch of Kenny assets. I yelled at the computer for an hour trying to get the tile map to work with non-standard tiles that weren't designed to be an auto tile. But I got them working. And I found Kids Can Code's thing on how to do realistic game physics. And I realized, he's using a kinematic body. I want to use a rigid body. But I've done this. I've just done this. I've just rewritten the physics system, or used the physics system to make something that feels like a car. So I just spent like a few hours using the stuff I've done in MagRacer to make these cars feel real. And I give it to Mikey. He says, these feel like MagRacers. It's like, oh, you're right. There's not enough traction. Boom, traction. And then all these things that you learn, even if you're not making that kind of game, impact everything else these new techniques, these new insights.
I mean, ultimately, that's what we hope that everybody who takes any of our courses is doing. That they take that little bit of knowledge, even if it. I mean, I take courses all the time. By the way, it's not something that I'd ever shy away from doing. I'm always wanting to learn, and I've taken courses before where only 10% of it was new information. And that's a really bad threshold. You can say, well, that was a bit of a waste of time. I knew all of that already. Dangerous words, I know. But that 10% was worth it, because it just taught me the 1 or 2 things that, I never thought about approaching it from the other way, just a different technique. I'll give an example here. So one of the things you can do in Blender to create a rotational array is to use an empty, link an object to that empty and rotate the empty and say repeat 10 times, and it will repeat around a rotational array, repeat in a circle. The other thing you can do is just duplicate your object with an origin in the right location and then just repeat that operation. So instead of these 20 steps, you can just go Shift and R 10 times. Boom, done.
Yep.
End of my monologue.
It was a good monologue. I liked it. Basically, learn everything. The other thing that really helped up both our developments is working with someone else. Like, you guys get involved in game jams, do teams, all the rest of it, because just Mikey and I having to go backwards and forwards, we're like, this is a brilliant asset. I can't use this. Or Mikey saying, what you're asking for is insane. Can we try it this way? And then both of us working with Bass, who has a different coding paradigm. And he's going in like, you need to put in something in here. What if someone's making a level and they put the AI in the wrong place? You need some sort of check in there before the game runs. He's very good at those. Yeah. He's very good at those. You are not a child of an NPC. You can't be here.
I'll ignore you. Yeah, that's a really important code paradigm that I learned heavily when doing C++, because C++ gives you a lot of control, but if you don't put your checks and balances in, I mean, the common one is a null pointer. But you can check for null pointers. It's not like you can't put the code in to make sure it doesn't happen. But a lot of people don't put the code in. And why is my stuff not working? But it will cause an instant crash without error. Well, sometimes with an error. Who knows? But
the errors we've had in MagRacer, just in our prototyping, my favorite with maths is NaN, which is actually a piece of graffiti in both levels. Both of them are hidden.
Maths is not a number.
And that
I'm pretty sure it is.
That took weeks to track down, and Bastian finally did it. And it was in the AI code, and it was a rare floating point error. So the way that Godot was handling very, very small decimals and just rounding them quickly, and then suddenly getting a divide by 0. And it was like, well, I can't do this. Maths is my NaN. Say it.
Maths is my NaN.
Maths is my NaN.
Oh, dear. Okay, I think that's pretty much covered everything we're really excited about. We are excited about MagRacer. And we've got our fingers crossed. We're going to push out hard over the next, I think it's 8-10 days. I can't remember. 7 days.
We understand the reality situation. We're still very excited. We're still very, I mean, this is still possible.
It's 8 days.
Well, did we go live on the Monday?
Oh. Well, thank you, whoever's just backed. Who's just backed?
We are aware of the reality situation, but we also think this is a very exciting project. If we can make this a big course and teach everyone how to make games like this, we'd love to do that. If not, that's fine. It'll be a passion project. You guys can support elsewhere. We'll put in other ways that you guys can get in lifetime memberships. Work on these other cool projects, these big courses, these small courses, these crossovers.
Yes. I'll give a shout out there, Lawrence. If you are listening, I presume you're listening. Otherwise, it's a very timely back. But thank you for the lifetime back, and we'll keep everybody informed whatever way things go. Lots of exciting things coming out, and the stuff that we've done for MagRacer, it's armed us really well to go in either direction. So that's really exciting.
One way or the other, we'll make sure you guys can play this. I need to export the current build and put it on itch.io.
Yeah. See what you guys think to the new Andromeda level.
You could wait years for the big course variants. I mean, there is also the possibility that we redo the Kickstarter a little later when things have calmed down and we've learned some more lessons.
There's no reason why we can't have another go at this, maybe with updated assets so the game looks sexier, because we know that sexy sells, and it's not
a
just
mailing list, and not
more
people. A pandemic with a very stressful election, like the timing was pretty good.
Yeah, why not? Oh well, I am genuinely grateful for everybody who's supported us so far, and whether or not that's financially or just getting the word out there, both are just as valuable as one another. We are still a small company, so it's really humbling to know that we've got that level of support in general, and more people are joining the stream an hour in. It's true what they say. So I've been reading a lot on stream statistics recently because I know how to party, and they say that it takes about an hour or two before a stream to become popular. So we need to find a different way of going into this.
I will also say I really don't want to put motion blur in this game.
I want motion blur, and I also want the control. I want verticality control, but he won't put it in.
Really, just before we went live, Mikey tried the latest version. It's like before I put in the don't bounce so much fix. He's like, can you give me verticality control?
Pitch authority.
Don't want that. It's like, I do. It's like you're going up 400 kilometers per hour. There's a slight rise in the thing. I want you to very gently pull up without going left or right.
I was like, use the other stick then. I mean, after playing Star Wars Squadrons, I'm like, the sticks do different things in each game anyway. So I buy a voucher for Crimbo for someone doesn't have to be. That's cool now.
This came about because there was a bug that came out weirdly when he was playing, where he respawned at the wrong angle. So every time he accelerated, he went straight up into the air.
I was loving it though. It wasn't an annoying. Oh, it could have been an annoying bug, but it was fun.
I mean, it meant you were going away from the track every 2 seconds.
Oh.
No, you really don't want uppy downy controls.
I do.
And motion blur at those speeds just loses all visual detail and feels like you have cataracts.
Yeah, we did talk about this in a bit more depth. We were saying that really we'd need to custom a shader that kept the central part of your screen where you're actually focusing non-blurred, and then start to blur more and more radially outwards.
How are you going to deal with corners coming up?
With tunnel vision, of course. Slow down.
This is... Okay, I don't like games that restrict my visual information because they're trying to copy old video cameras that don't exist anymore.
Like a shader vignette, but more blurry. So this is the thing. I absolutely hate motion blur. But I appreciate if you're watching someone play a game like that, it can, for some people, not Yann, look better. Did I point the right way there?
It just makes me forgot the glasses.
Yeah, I get it. It's the first thing I turn on. I was playing a game. It was Squadrons. So I've been playing Star Wars Squadrons recently, and I was like, "Why is everything blurry? I can't keep up." It was like I was on slow mo, and they put it under.
Sky, and she had motion blur on. And we went up to the spaceship, and she's like, "Nope."
Hey, Jelly, how you doing?
Jelly, yeah, motion blur. So I think part of it's a generational thing. And part of it is if you grew up playing very cinematic style games like Call of Duty, which have lots and lots of set pieces and love motion blur because it looks like a movie, fine. Personally, I'm switching it off because that's not how eyes work, but fine. If you want to design a game that mimics every time you move your head, you get a cataract, you go for it. I'm going to eat my chocolate.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what we've learned so far from this game can be applied to so many other types of games as well. So, I mean, ultimately, MagRacer was spawned because we were just playing around with generating curves. That's how it was born, wasn't it? We were generating curves and trying to create a racetrack from that. And before that, Godot Getaway was a go-kart. No?
I wonder if I can make a physics object that actually hovers. I was trying to make air hockey.
So air hockey spawns MagRacer. A go-karting game spawns a cops and robbers New York City style game. It was essentially
the best thing, by the way, is I started playing this 3D air hockey game, and the puck is going so fast that it just breaks collision. Because it doesn't matter what you do, it's going to go so fast that Godot doesn't calculate the collision in time.
It passes through
the end wall. So that was where it came in.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. That's when you need to start talking about, instead of passing through a collision, you need to see on one frame, was it not within a collision volume? Then on the next, if it's within the collision volume, calculate where it should have been and then fire it back again. It starts to get very computationally heavy at that point and very confusing. But there we go. That's trigger volumes versus just passing through a plane.
What he said.
Yeah, man.
I don't know if it sounds cheap alternative than legal drugs, Roderick. It depends how much time and effort you spend developing it. It might be easier to get illegal drugs. I mean, it is 2020.
And at this point, Canopy Games does not endorse the use of illegal drugs. Thank you. Back to you, Yann.
We never endorse them.
Yeah. I mean, diving into physics is an interesting topic because suddenly things act in the way that the game engine itself thinks physics should behave, not the way that you experience the world necessarily.
There's a lot of interesting stuff that happens. At the times where you need physics to stop working.
Yes.
For example, you're in a craft that is on a magnetic repulsion cushion. You're going at 400 kilometers an hour. You hit a wall. You are going to spin.
Yes.
And the first few iterations of this game that I let Mikey play, he hated it. Because every time he hit a wall, spin. Now, I'd learned enough to compensate for it, but Mikey would just refuse to get any further. So I ended up having to put in a thing where if you hit a wall, it locks your rotational axis. It doesn't lock it, it damps it massively, so you can't spin, you can't actually turn, and then gently interpolates back down to where it should be over a second. You don't notice that. To you, it feels like you've hit the wall. The other part of that was you had to make all the walls bouncy.
Yes.
In fact, not the walls, the craft has to be bouncy. So when you hit the wall, you are pushed away from it, so you don't get this horrible, I'm stuck in the wall, I'm grinding against it. You guys think that it's bad now when you're trying to turn away from the wall at speed and you're stuck on it? Imagine when you're actually glued to the wall.
It's one of those things, realistic versus physically accurate. So I love simulation games. I love Kerbal Space Program, and part of that is destruction and failing. That's actually core part of the game. But something like a physics racer, if you're not used to how real cars behave and you go and play a physics racer, you get in a car, you put your foot down and you just sit there or you spin out immediately, and that's real, but it's not very rewarding as a player. And the same with MagRacer's early conception was the whole, okay, this is physically accurate, but it's not fun. I'm not enjoying the experience.
Now, a lot of people talk about the difficulty level, and there is a big learning curve in that game because it's not a car. When I turn,
yes,
I am not heading that way.
You know what it reminds me more of? It reminds me more of drift mode in a Need for Speed game than Wipeout in terms of its dynamics and how you go around corners. That's because of my flying style, I'm sure, but it feels more drifting than actually going in a straight line and sticking to stuff.
You know what it reminds me of? Being drunk or trying to run across ice.
I've never had that experience. Do tell, Yann. This sounds like an interesting story.
Well, I've been drunk, but the idea that I'm trying to go that way, but I'm still heading this way, and I need to.
Oh, it's like a Disney cartoon or an Acme. So we're coming up on the hour now, or actually just gone over, in fact. Do you guys have any questions whilst you've got us?
Yep. Any thoughts?
Oh, I thought you had a question, yeah.
Well, I do have a question. If you were interested in backing a Patreon for developing MagRacer, what kind of thing would you like in return? Like, we have some ideas, but it's something that you guys are thinking.
Yeah, we'd definitely like that to be driven by the people who are passionate about MagRacer, not just ice driving.
Hey, welcome. Ice driving is awesome. The first time I did it in New Jersey, I was certainly struck by a sense of awe.
The first time I did it in Nottingham, I had a £1,500 bill to repair my front suspension and arm and a new wheel.
So you were struck by a sense of other vehicle?
No, just curb. I got to the bottom of a hill in black ice and full lock straight into the curb, so the tyre went like that, broke the lower arm and suspension. I drove it to the garage. It was very interesting because the steering wheel didn't really do much. And the car was literally doing this.
You had a clown car?
Pretty much.
So, yeah.
Pretty much.
Any questions, any thoughts on what you'd like to get for Patreon, that kind of thing?
Sorry, I've got to laugh because I'm watching myself back, and that's hilarious.
That was pretty bouncy.
That was. We have ice highways up in Canada. Yes, what's 120 kilometres? About 70 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Sorry, the UK is a very interesting place. We've kind of gone metric. We just refuse to do distances and speed. Or weight. Distances, speed, and weight. Or height.
Well, we kind of do weight.
Yeah, I think weight's one of those small things. I've got a buddy from a World of Tank Days, yep.
He was driving on ice for fun. I think he's a loon too.
Don't get me wrong, if I had the money to put into a little banger that I could drive around in mud or ice on not public highways, I must add, I would totally do it. That sounds a laugh.
Sounds awful. It sounds like I have too many control issues to have a car that's not doing what I'm telling it to do. I'm not doing that. One thing that's been very interesting that I've been playing recently, this is apropos of nothing, is Teardown.
I refuse to get tear down because I think a couple of days will disappear. I think it looks an absolutely amazing game. I've been following it for probably 18 months to 2 years, and how it's developed and the way that he's got all the physics, not only the physics, but how everything interacts. So when you've probably seen one of the trailers where he's banging on a pipe support and the pipe bends down afterwards. I'm just like, this is amazing.
It's very well made. The thing that I like about it is it's very good at making me feel very smart and then very stupid and then very smart. There was a level quite late where you have to destroy propane tanks, but the moment you destroy one, the alarm's going to go off and you have 60 seconds to get the rest of them and get out. But the level is huge and winding and buildings. And then I realized I can lift these propane tanks. I'm just going to put them all in one place. So I lift the first one, put it in a good place. Great. Here's the second one. The second one has a metal bracket and it's bolted to the wall. But I have a blowtorch. I can go through metal brackets. I'm going to stand next to a propane tank and aim a blowtorch at it. Can you guess what happened next, Mikey?
Boom?
Yeah.
Is this where everybody in the chat starts recalling their bad driving experiences?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. I love it.
First time I drove on ice, I was 38. That is...
I've cancelled trips because of ice. I'm just like, is the trip life-threateningly important? And if the answer's no, I ain't doing it.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I was travelling to Wales, so across, literally across the country, from Nottingham across to Wales, which is going all the way to the top north of Wales, Anglesey, and we left at 4 a.m. because I wanted to spend the day in Wales before getting into the cottage we were going to. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we went along the A50, which is quite a long stretch going west in the UK, and there were lorries to the left of me, a Mondeo to the right. And
here I am, stuck in the middle of ice.
And it was quite funny. The Mondeo started off behind me, pulled out into the outside lane to overtake. I saw them just wobbling like this. Then it was kind of, they sheepishly pulled back in and tucked in behind me. There's a reason why I'm going 50, mate. It's just ice everywhere. And then we passed 2 lorries that had been ditched, and we turned on the radio. Just to see if there were any other traffic problems. The road we'd just gone through was then shut for the rest of the day whilst they were recovering all these people going off. And I'm just like, if only they were driving it like 40 miles an hour, everybody would have been fine. But
Melicon says 1v1 tutoring sessions. Yep. Daz is talking about banger racing. Dozen bangers, which in London means sausage. Dozen sausages turn up and go round and round an oval circuit in Money Farm and Field. What's else? Daz, I think you need to stay off the mushrooms. Jelly. I hide in the footwell.
Going over the Severn Bridge scares the hell out of passengers. Yeah, I mean, going on to the 1v1 tutoring sessions, the thing I suppose we've got to watch out for there is being able to deliver on anything that's there. So if like 5 people, no, let's say if like 20 people wanted it, it would saturate our time, and then we're like, well, do we have the time to do courses? So if we did do something like 1-to-1, it would be highly limited.
I do like the idea of 1v1 tutoring, though, because that sounds like it's me versus the student.
Go!
Who could teach the other person more? Oh, Rio actually knows what he's talking about. Okay. Round 1 to Melicon.
Oh, it's interesting. Melicon and I have been talking lots in the background about, well, we were talking about buildings last week, but we've been talking a lot about hard surface modelling and techniques for doing it as well. And he's actually taught me quite a bit about some of the techniques he uses. And I'm like, oh, I did not know you could do it that way. That makes a lot more sense from what I would have done. Racing sausages. Banger racing.
That'd be an amazing game. I was going up there with the bouncy castle racer.
Is this going to be volumetric mashed potato to drive through?
The bangers and mash. It's like a demolition derby for sausages.
This is how our conversations usually end up at the end.
This is how we come up with courses. Mortal code bet.
I need to do some more research. I'm off to the butchers. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's great, guys. Oh,
so those who don't know, bangers and mash is sausages and mashed potato, usually with onion gravy. And now my mouth is watering.
So what would the gravy be, like an oil slick on the track?
I think it would just be the prize. Good gravy. Alright, I feel like...
Oh, Jelly, no. This is a family-friendly channel.
Yep. Why would you eat donuts with your sausages? Those flavors don't go together.
Oh, dear. Oh, thanks, everybody.
Yep. Alright.
Thank you all for joining us. Get the word out there about MagRacer. Let's see if we can actually reach the goal. It would be amazing to do so. And, thank you for all of your support. It really is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll speak to you next week, and probably during the week as well. Have fun.
Bye!
Bye!